Right. Yeah, you're on there.
Yeah, no, he's fine.
Okay, it's sort of. Is everybody ready?
He's over there.
Yes, that's all right. He wants to listen on his own thing.
Yes.
Mary, are you ready?
Yes.
Are you behaving yourself?
Okay, everybody can put their microphones off maybe, so that there's no background noise. And then you can put it on again later. Is that okay?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I thought, you know, there was no good night or good evening, boys and girls. I didn't know we were going to have any storytelling tonight till somebody phoned Auntie Grace and said, we're having our story tonight. So I had to think up what. Do you know why you came to South Africa? Why do you all live in South Africa? Do you know?
They've got their phones on mute.
Oh, I see.
So can you unmute? Do you want to?
No, they can hear me.
Yes,
But
they can hear
speak.
you. Yeah, they can speak.
You want to say?
Well, you know, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to go to be a missionary, to the mission field. And no matter, every year I still thought I thought I would go to darkest Africa, you know, away into the middle of Africa where there was no white people. I always thought of that. But anyhow, as the years passed on, things changed, and I met your grandpa. We married, and he was interested in going to South Africa. But you know, one day he was at work, and one of the workmen had a letter in his hand, and he waved it in front of your grandpa, and he said, "Read that," he said, "I thought of you in Charlotte." And it was from the man in Mowbray who had the printing press
Cape Town.
in Cape Town, and he was looking for somebody to help him. And this man in Papa's work said, "Ken, I thought of you in Charlotte." And your Papa said, "Thank you very much, but we're not interested in Cape Town. But we'll pray for him." And you know, we started to pray that somebody would send that old man help.
The Lord would send him help, yeah?
And you know, it was about a year and 10 months, I think. And one night, Papa was praying before we went to bed. And he said, he prayed that somebody would go and help this old man and his wife, because she was a complete invalid and he was getting old. So when Papa had finished his prayer, just about finished his prayer, he said, "Lord, if you want Charlotte and I to go, grant that there'll be something very special about Cape Town this weekend." Now, do you know, boys and girls, you know where Ireland is and Scotland is and England is, but we never knew where Cape Town was because there was no television. There was maps, but we weren't studying geography. And we just knew that Cape Town was in Africa somewhere. That's all we knew. But Papa prayed, "If you want us to go, grant there'll be something about Cape Town this weekend." And do you know, boys and girls, we went to bed, we had a good sleep. And before we were up out of bed in the morning, there was a rap at the door. And in came the post through the letterbox. And Papa ran down the stairs to see what had come through the letterbox. And do you know what it was, boys and girls? It was a letter from Cape Town. And we didn't know anybody here. So Papa opened the letter. And who was it from? It was from his daddy's cousin who lived in Dublin. Dublin is away down in the south of Ireland, if you don't know where it is. And he decided that he would go to Cape Town for a holiday, and he didn't tell one person. And do you know what he said in the letter? He said, I've a lot to tell you about Cape Town, but he said, I must tell you about a man who has a printing press. And that's what he told us about. The man who had the printing press in Cape Town. Wasn't that wonderful?
Is that the man you were praying for?
Yes, that's the man we were praying for that night. And there was a letter from Uncle Willie. Anyhow, we were so excited that the Lord had answered our prayer. And we wanted to write to him right away and say, hey, we want to come and work with you. But of course we didn't do that because we didn't know anything about the man. We didn't know where Cape Town was in those early days. That's over 60 years ago, boys and girls. That's a long time ago. That's older than your mommy and your daddy. It's a long, long time ago. Anyhow, we did pray about it. And then we told some other friends. And then we wrote to Mr. Coleridge in Cape Town. And we told him that we were interested to come. And, you know, he just didn't say, oh, that's great. He just put a lot of difficulties and disappointments so that if we weren't meant to come, we would listen to the things he said and we wouldn't come. But we knew that God was calling us. And no matter what he said, we would still be going to Cape Town. But you know, it was over a year later when we eventually sailed for Cape Town.
Ship.
Yes, and we arrived. Do you know, on the boat took 2 whole weeks to get here. There was no aeroplanes in those days. It's not like your daddy. You just get on an aeroplane and you go to America or wherever you want to go. We had to go on the boat, and it took 2 whole weeks. And you know, it was Christmas time in the boat, and it was New Year in the boat. And you know, it was wonderful. They had a big party on the boat for everybody, and everybody got a present. And I remember your Auntie Ruth was just a little girl then of 4 years old. That's how old Auntie Ruth was, just like some of you.
Nana, they're Nana.
Yes, you're Nana. Yes, you're Nana. And she was just 4 years old, and she had a wonderful time on the boat, and she got a lovely dolly for her Christmas present. She was very, very pleased. Anyhow, we came to South Africa, and when the boat stopped in Cape Town, there was 3 men to meet us off the boat. And they brought us to Pinelands, where someone had said, we're going on holiday and they can come and stay in our house for 2 weeks until they find a place. So that was how we came to Cape Town. And that's why you're all here, because Granny and Papa came. Yes. And then your daddy or your mummy was born here. So that's how you came to live in Cape Town. We came the whole way from Ireland, but you were born here. So now I must say, I will agree with you that Cape Town is a lovely, lovely place to live in. Do you all like living in Cape Town?
Mummy, Anshin's children live in Pretoria.
Well, they live in Pretoria.
South Africa.
Her mummy used to live
That's right.
in Cape Town. Before her children were ever born, her mummy lived in Cape Town. She was born in Cape Town.
And Caleb's trying to tell you that he lives in George.
Oh, yes. All right. You live in George. That's fine. You can stay there. You're very happy there. And George is a nice place. Yes. But anyhow, I should say, that's how we came to South Africa. Not just Cape Town. That's how we came to South Africa, and that's how you got here too.
Any questions?
Now, are there any questions? I'll tell you what happened first. We went to see the man in the printing press, And we thought we were coming to a big printing press. But he just had an old machine in his garage. And inside his house, he had one room to work in, and he had a folding machine and a stitching machine. That's all he had. And then there was a very, very nice African girl called Jessie, and she worked there and she helped him. So that's how we came to Cape Town, and that's where the press was first at Mowbray. And Mr. Coleridge, he taught my husband, your grandpa, everything he knew about printing. And you know, he wasn't a printer when he came from England. He was a schoolmaster. Yes. And he decided with his wife and 4 children that they would emigrate to South Africa. And they ended up in
Johannesburg.
Johannesburg, yes. And then he started to work there. And then one day, there was an African boy that he met in the mines. And he was going back home to Malawi. And Mr. Coleridge says, oh, if only I had a little paper about the Lord Jesus to give to him that he could take it back to Malawi. Maybe someday we'd be able to read it. So Mr. Coleridge quickly made a tract, the 2 roads, on a duplicator, and he gave them to this man to take back to Malawi. And that was the first tracts that he printed, was on a duplicator to go back to Malawi. So that's how the press started, dear. So if you have any questions you want to know.
You're unmuted already.
Yeah, unmuted.
And maybe you want to know, that was in Mowbray, and it was in his house.
But you lived in Pinelands first, and that's where Hannah and Emma and Rachel lived.
Yes, that's right. And then, short while. And
And
then,
now that Granny's so old, she's going to go and live in Pinelands again with Ben.
Ben, he says.
Oh, Ben. I said, but you know, girls and boys, it was just the way the Lord led us. And you know, the press was in Mr. Coleridge's house. We worked with him for 2 years. And you know, he said to us one day, I'm going to take my wife overseas to Scotland once more. And you know, she couldn't even walk. She was an invalid in a wheelchair. And we thought the man was crazy, but it was none of our business. So away he went.
And you'll tell them that story then tomorrow night. Or
Right.
Thursday, Friday, Tuesday night.
All right.
Okay, that'll be the next part.
Yes. So then he arranged to go overseas, and we were left behind in his house, and I'll tell you the next part of the story the next night. All right?
All right, thanks, Granny.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Caleb says that's fine.
Oh, Caleb says it's fine.
Thanks, Granny.
Thank you for listening, everybody. They
Yes,
said
thank you for listening. Yes. And
Lovely
now
to see you all.
And now you know how you came to South Africa. Yes. Because you were born here.
Good
Wow.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night, night, everybody.
Night. Keep tight.
Slap
Night,
later.
night.
Bye.